Hey, Bright Lights, welcome back to the Space Doctor series on the Architecting channel. Good to see you again, and welcome if you are here for the very first time. My name is Angela, and I'm an architect, Feng Shui practitioner, and researcher who has spent my whole career studying the science behind design for well-being. And I know enough to know that everybody can use this information, whether you are a design professional like me or you're someone that just wants to make the places where you live, work, play, study, whatever it is you do, a little bit better. You're going to find something useful here. That's why you're going to want to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single video. Using my Saluda Genesis deck, I draw two cards, one from the foundational concepts part, which is about core issues related to health or dis-ease, and one from the Saluda Genesis aspects part. Now, I've keyed each of the 5 core theories of Saluda Genesis to a feng shui element. And in addition, I have a whole suite of cards that go with that aspect. So even more theories that are out there that help to reinforce the initial core theory. So every single week, I set an intention while I shuffle the cards that the message we're going to get is the one we most need to hear for this week. And the card that I drew from the foundational concepts part of the deck is the respiration card. Now, you might think, well, respiration, that's just breathing. Not so simple as that. The act of breathing is a brain function essential to life, and it adapts to your metabolic rate, your posture, your body movement, your cardiovascular function, and your emotions. Why is this important? Because it synchronizes electrical activity in your brain, especially when we breathe through the nose. There is an area in our nose called the olfactory cortex, and that is linked with the amygdala, the fight or flight, the basic core brain, as well as the hippocampus. So when we can use nasal breathing, when we can fully engage the act of respiration, we can improve our physical and mental health just by breathing, right? And you can see on the card, the cloud symbolizes that revelation, that clearing out. The blue sky is clarity and positivity. Now, today, what I want to talk about specifically with respiration is what happens when that is negatively impacted. The reciprocal reflex, which means that specific places in the body can be moved to reset the nervous system, to reset your respiration. And those body parts include your diaphragm. Obviously, that is what expands and contracts your lungs, but it can also include your eyes, your fingers, your shoulders, your neck, and poorly designed spaces, especially ones that have spatial hierarchies that send a negative message, can induce stress because it can impact all of those things and make you feel confined or disoriented or socially uncomfortable, which is going to lead to physical discomfort. And sometimes these spaces actually do create physical discomfort as well, or physical hardships. So that physical and emotional distress that spaces can create impacts the respiration and therefore impacts our well-being, our ability to be in a calm and steady state. So that is a great segue into the companion card, which is spatial hierarchy. This is part of the self-efficacy aspect of salutogenesis. Self-efficacy means I can. It's how much you believe you can do something. It is associated with the fire element in Feng Shui, and fire is about the spirit, the power that we feel we have. And a hierarchical barrier is very simply a structural, visual, or an organizational constraint that inhibits effective communication or our quality of experience with a space. And to overcome that, we have to put extra energy and effort out there. So you can see on the card, this is symbolized by the stair, which can represent social status, the dynamic of authority and power being on high, not something that is readily there for the common person. Instead, there's a suggestion that effort and struggle are required in order to overcome the challenge. The mountains also represent trials to be passed, hardships to overcome. And the pyramid represents the need to pursue some kind of change, rebirth, regrowth, which may or may not always be something positive, right? Why do we have to change to be a fit for the space instead of the space accommodating our need? So what kind of things are hierarchical barriers? Well, they could be things that prevent accessibility. So if you are in a wheelchair and there is not an elevator or ramp, but there's a level change, that's preventing you from accessing something. If a space is very dimly lit and you can't read and you need to read to be in this space, that's preventing you from fully using the space. Things that are actual physical challenges that create an us versus them dynamic, like transaction counters, right? The person behind the counter, behind the desk, has the authority, and the person that needs something has to walk up to that desk. And there is already a power dynamic set up just by the way that the space is set up. Anything that creates a level change, like a raised platform or a dais, creates that same hierarchy. The person on the top is looking down on everyone else. They clearly have the power, the authority, and the others do not. Anything that creates a physical separation, like walls or gates or a glass barrier, that also says you're not welcome on the other side of this wall. Things like one-way glass or security checkpoints clearly send a message about how trustworthy people entering a space are believed to be. We can also create hierarchical barriers by creating the illusion of exclusivity or restricted access, like this is a key carded floor and only the people that have that card are allowed on it. Things like monumentality. This was used quite a bit in ancient times, right? To convey power and strength and grandeur and to intimidate. A large, monumental, very formal space says to the average person, you are lowly, you don't belong here, you're not good enough. But another way that that exclusivity can be expressed is things like reserving the best space for higher status people. So for example, in a office, you may have private offices along the windows, so the important people get more privacy, they get a view, and in the center is the workspace for everyone else, and that's open office. So they get none of the amenity, and the special important people get the bigger amenity. We've seen the bigger the office, the higher the status. The corner office is higher status. And finally, you can have cultural deterrence. If you clearly feel like you don't belong, if there is a culture you don't belong to that is so dominating in this space, that's also creating a hierarchical barrier. So remember, anything that is designed to intimidate is a hierarchical barrier. Anything designed to create claustrophobia or compression to make you feel uncomfortable or tense is a hierarchical barrier. Anything that creates disorientation or disempowers you by giving you a lack of control is a hierarchical barrier. Anything that doesn't allow the right amount of privacy or good transitions between public and private spaces. So maybe you're able to be in a room with a closed door, but if what's on the other side of that door is major public space, do you really feel like you have privacy? Anything that is a forced interaction. This is an interesting one because sometimes design is deliberately trying to force you to engage in certain behaviors that you may not want to behave in that way. A lack of social choice, that can also be a way to disempower somebody. And that stress instead causing us to take more shallow breaths, causing us to be in postures or feel emotions that will reinforce and sustain that stress state. Now, because we are working with the fire element with self-efficacy, I do want to point out that the Bagua in Feng Shui, this is Gua 9. Gua 9 is really that enlightenment. It is fame and reputation. It is what you want to be known for. So think about that as well when we think about hierarchy. What do we want to be known for? What do we want people to feel in this space? Is it merely a reflection of the power of a few, or is it a welcoming, inclusive environment? And how are we choosing spatially to think about that? Within your own home or within a building, look at what is located in that Gua. Remember, we always orient the Bagua map with the bottom of the map being aligned with the main entry. So this would be the top center of the map. What's in that space? Is that something that is reinforcing what you want to be known for, what you want people to accomplish, or is it sending a very different message? Feng Shui tells us that space can be a tool to have flowing energy associated with good respiration, but it also can be a tool that helps us feel at ease and safe and protected. So especially when we are thinking about spatial hierarchy, the person on the losing end of the hierarchy feels none of that. So what can we do to ask better questions, to think about safety and security, not always in terms of keeping someone out, but in promoting better interaction and better visual awareness and sense of what is going on around us. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you learned something a little bit more deeply about how design can impact our behavior, but also can impact the amount of stress we feel and even our respiratory process. If you enjoyed this, make sure you tell a friend and that you like and subscribe.